this is a breakthrough that's not been a breakthrough because it's the same exact position again that Iran has taken for a half century.
Yeah, and we've seen this pattern, as Mika pointed out. This is what the president does. He threatened these massive strikes yesterday and then backed down a couple of hours later because he said the threat of the strikes brought Iran to the table. We now have a deal. He's even talking about a signing ceremony with Vice President J.D. Vance this weekend in Europe, to which Iran says, not so fast, we don't have a deal. And I would add also, Mika, Israel said, we are unaware of any deal being brokered between the United States and Iran.
Yeah, but, you know,
that's a problem.
The thing is, though, John Lemire, how many times has this been? I read this morning that CNN had a banner last night that said something like, this is the 39th time Donald Trump has said peace is at hand. I mean, it just would exhaust even Neville Chamberlain talking about peace
pretty exhausted.
Being at hand and peace not being at hand. But again, it's at least happened 36 times. And my question is this, especially given what everybody knows about Iran, what we certainly have known about Iran since 1979, the more desperate any president seems for a deal, the more a president goes out and says, hey, we're very close to a deal, and allows the Iranians to say, no, we're not. We haven't seen it. We're not sure how close we are. We don't know if we even want this deal. It seems to just undermine the president. So is this about the markets? I know certainly a lot of people make a ton of money betting, shorting markets that somehow have information right before the president's going to say it. What's going on? Why does he keep doing this 36, 37, 38, 39 times?
Yeah, a theme of this entire second term for President Trump is he likes to boast about how many wars he's ended. Well, he's done this one 39 times, the same one. There is a sense here of a few things. That, yeah, undoubtedly, there have been moments where people have made some money off of his proclamations, most of them timed to just before the markets open. That was not the case for this one. I think this one is just more of just his desperation to get out of this, that he's trying to almost will it in existence. And as you and Willie just ran through, not only is Iran saying no, but Israel's also saying we don't know anything about this, that we're not sure this is a real thing. And that, I think, is the key here, is that Trump, we know he's looking for an off-ramp. He knows he wants to put this war behind him. He's well aware, even though he won't say it publicly, he is well aware, per reporting, that it did not go as they hoped it would. And he is trying to get the page turned. But you're right, Iran sort of makes habit out of humiliating American presidents. We have seen it over the decades. And this is a case where no doubt their economy is hurting. No doubt that there will be things they will need at some point to end this or to bring some sort of ceasefire here. But they're willing to tweak the president a little bit more, and they're going to come out of this stronger than the war began. Hardliners are empowered, Joe and Mika, and of course they have shown they can close the Strait of Hormuz, and suddenly, forget the nukes, that is their biggest weapon, the economic weapon they have to shutting that vital waterway.
Which is exactly what everybody's warned about since 1979. If you go into Iran, then Iran can shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And as Mika's own father said in 2012 to Charlie Rose in an interview, they can't win a war against us, but they can shut down the strait and set the world economy on fire. That's exactly what's been going on. But again, I just want to underline the president's a stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. A couple days ago, it was very obvious that negotiations weren't working. So the president then talked about doing some military strikes. It lasted a day. The Iranians unmoved. And so the president said, we're going to do it again the next day. Pulls back. Again, that stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. That's exactly what the Iranians want. They believe it shows weakness. That's what the Wall Street Journal editorial page was saying yesterday. So, again, it is confounding not only to those of us in the United States, but certainly confounding to people on Capitol Hill, confounding to people across Europe, confounding to people actually in Iran who, again, see that as weakness.
It's a pattern that's very bad for the president politically because unlike maybe a lot of members of the Republican Party or some members of the media where the president can say something and sort of wave a wand and others will it, and others will parrot it. Iran looks at what he says and laughs. It's a different entity completely. So here's how yesterday played out. President Trump once again threatened new military strikes on Tehran before announcing he had once again called off the attacks. Since the U.S. and Israel launched the war in Iran back in late February, the president has publicly delayed or canceled planned military action at least 8 times. Trump claimed progress in negotiation as the reason for backing off the strikes yesterday.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing.
All right. The president offered a few other details, and he has claimed a deal could be imminent several times in recent weeks. Later last night, Trump put it like this, quote, "We ended the war with Iran today." Tehran, however, is at least publicly telling a very different story. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman told state TV that the country has not reached a final decision regarding any agreement, and no signing date is set. Axios, meanwhile...
That just keeps happening. It just keeps happening.
Yeah. Axios, meanwhile, has details of what is in the agreement. President Trump says he's ready to sign. According to a diplomat from one of the mediating countries and a U.S. official, the memorandum of understanding would extend the ceasefire for 60 days, including Lebanon, during which time nuclear negotiations would be held. On the Strait of Hormuz, the key waterway would be reopened immediately without tolls, with the return to pre-war shipping volumes within 30 days. In return, the U.S. blockade would also be lifted. Iran would also be given temporary sanctions waivers to allow it to sell oil for 60 days. Axios reports the tentative agreement was reached on Wednesday night after hours of negotiations between a Qatari mediator and Iran's foreign minister, with the mediator coordinating by phone with Trump envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
Okay, I think we made... Michael Weiss, I think we made a mistake here. It's Friday. People get tired. And so I guess Alex just put in an old script.
Not an old script.
Because we've read that 12 times before. And there are a couple new details, though, now. You have Netanyahu, obviously, is fighting for his own political life, being called a weakling, saying he follows Donald Trump around. He's getting hammered literally from the left, center, and right in Iran, even though the left, center, and right in Iran is all sort of center-right right now, at the very least. But again, Michael, maybe you can give us some insight. Why do we keep hearing the same thing over and over and over again when the Iranians have rejected this deal time and again, and hardliners in America have rejected this deal?
I mean, I just want to read you Iran's Mehr news agency put out their version of this deal. Now, again, underscore, we don't know that this is the thing that Axios is reporting. We don't know if this is going to be the memorandum of understanding. But in their version of the deal, they get $300 billion in reconstruction money, $24 billion in a cash infusion, half of which will come before the negotiations begin. Remember, Joe, this isn't a deal. This is an agreement to keep talking, right, and an extension of a ceasefire. There's nothing in here, on, again, the Iranian version, that talks about the missile program or financing or arming terrorist proxies like Lebanese Hezbollah. I mean, this would be an utter humiliation. I could see why Trump would want J.D. Vance to go to a signing ceremony instead of Donald Trump, right, if this is any pale shade of what this thing is going to look like. Look, I think he knows he's being had. He knows he's been abased by a regime that shouldn't exist by his lights, right? We were going in to do regime change. The Israelis certainly thought we were going to do regime change. We were going to arm the Kurds. We were going to install Ahmadinejad, a Holocaust-denying former president, as our preferred satrap. All of these plans came to dust. And he just wants out of it. I think Jonathan is right. You know, he's got buyer's remorse. He thinks he's been sold a bill of goods. He probably has been. And he just wants this thing over and done with. He's already looking at Cuba, right? But the problem is he can't sell this kind of thing. He can't sell it to his base. He can't sell it to the hawks. I mean, can you imagine Lindsey Graham on Twitter if anything like what I just read you is the agreement here? I mean, this makes the JCPOA look like the Iraq War. You know, I mean, this Donald Trump ran against Barack Obama, saying he just gifted all this money to Iran, pallets of cash. This is pallets of cash. probably with a little crypto action thrown in for the Witkoffs and the Kushners on the side, too. I mean, I don't know how anyone can look at this. And I've been talking not only to hawks in this country, who are very pro-war, I've talked to Israeli national security strategists, former Israeli spies, who tell me this is a disaster for us. And why is it a disaster? Prior to this war, Israel had freedom of action, right? They get bombed, Iran launches a missile at them, a terrorist blows something up. They don't ask our permission. They go in and they do what they have to. Now what happens? Donald Trump gets on the phone with every journalist and says, Bibi listens to me. You know, I'm the big boy here. The Israelis don't lift a finger unless I allow them to. This is not what Israel wants. You know, this war for them, I think, has become like a pair of golden handcuffs. Yes, we helped them bomb Iran. Yes, we helped them, get rid of at least most of the missile program. The Iranians took a beating. They've taken a beating with the economic penalties imposed by this blockade. But now the Israelis feel like, they oversold and underdelivered. And, Bibi has a problem, too, at home. Israelis do not feel like they're getting value for dollar for this thing. So he's facing a political revolt in his country.
Yeah, and there will be, obviously, John Heilman, a revolt in this country if those numbers are accurate. And I did notice that the president didn't talk about sanctions relief. He didn't talk about the so-called reconstruction dollars that he'd been talking about for quite some time. And you just look at these numbers that Michael just talked about. You're at about $325 billion that the Iranians would be paid just to go into negotiations for 6 months. I want to remind everybody, the great meltdown among all Republicans regarding Barack Obama's pallets of cash was $400 million.